There's a moment when someone walks into your life and nothing looks different on the outside, but something inside you shifts. You can't fully explain it. You just feel it. It's subtle, quiet, almost unnoticeable at first. But suddenly your thoughts change. Your perspective deepens. And the way you see yourself is no longer the same. And you start wondering, why this person? Why now? Because sometimes people don't enter your life by accident. Sometimes they arrive when you're on the edge of becoming someone new. Not to complete you, but to reflect something within you that's ready to awaken. You may have felt it already. That sense of being different lately. Like you don't fully belong to the same patterns anymore. Like the things that once made sense no longer do. You're outgrowing conversations, outgrowing environments, outgrowing a version of yourself that once felt comfortable, but now feels limiting. And then this person appears. Not perfect, not magical, just real. But somehow their presence makes you pause. They challenge the way you think. They make you more aware of your words. They make you notice parts of yourself you've been ignoring. And that's when it begins. Not a fantasy, not a shift, because real growth rarely feels comfortable. It feels like confusion. It feels like questioning everything you thought you knew. It feels like standing in between who you used to be and who you're becoming. And sometimes, the people who enter your life during this phase are not there to stay forever. They're there to awaken something, to show you a different perspective, to mirror your strength and your blind spots, to push you, even unintentionally, toward a deeper understanding of yourself. Think about it. Before they came into your life, were you the same person you are now? Or did something start to shift? Maybe you started reflecting more. Maybe you became more aware of your emotions. Maybe you began questioning your habits, your choices, your direction. That's not a coincidence. That's growth trying to happen. And sometimes growth needs a trigger, a conversation, a connection, a moment that makes you stop and really look at yourself. But here's the part most people miss. It's not about holding on to the person. It's about understanding what their presence revealed within you. Because the real transformation isn't happening because of them. It's happening within you. They didn't bring something new into your life. They uncovered something that was already there, waiting to be seen. Your awareness, your depth, your potential to evolve. And now you have a choice. You can ignore it. Go back to old patterns. Pretend nothing changed. Or you can lean into it. You can embrace the discomfort. Sit with the questions. Allow yourself to grow, even when it feels uncertain. Because this phase, this feeling of being different, this quiet shift inside you, this is where real transformation begins. Not loud, not dramatic, but deeply real. So if someone has entered your life recently and something feels different, don't rush to define it. Don't force it into a label. Instead, ask yourself, what is this experience teaching me about who I am becoming? Because the answer to that question might change everything. And maybe, just maybe, this wasn't about them changing your life. It was about you finally seeing yourself more clearly. If this message resonated with you, take a moment, pause, and reflect on your journey. Drop a comment sharing what has been shifting within you lately. And if you're ready to continue this path of awareness, growth, and deeper understanding, stay connected with Return to Awakening. Subscribe and walk this journey with intention. Because the more aware you become, the more powerful your life begins to feel. And the deeper you go into this awareness, the more you begin to notice something else. It's not just about them. It's about how you respond to their presence. What they say might stay in your mind longer than usual, not because of the words themselves, but because of what those words awaken inside you. A question you've been avoiding, a truth you've been suppressing, a feeling you didn't want to confront. And suddenly, you're not distracted anymore. You're aware. You start catching your own patterns in real time. The way you react, the way you overthink, the way you hold back or sometimes give too much. It becomes harder to ignore yourself. And that can feel overwhelming. Because growth doesn't just reveal your strengths. It also exposes your contradictions. The parts of you that want change, and the parts of you that resist it. There may be moments where you feel pulled in two directions. One side of you wants to stay comfortable, familiar habits, predictable routines. The other side wants something deeper, something more aligned, more honest, more real. And this internal tension, this quiet conflict, it's not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that something is evolving. Because when you begin to outgrow your old identity, it doesn't disappear overnight. It lingers. It tries to pull you back into what it knows. But now you're seeing it. And once you truly see something, you can't unsee it. That's the shift. You begin to realize that the discomfort you feel is not something to escape. It's something to understand. Because within that discomfort, there is clarity trying to emerge. You might notice that your conversations with this person feel different. Not always easy, not always smooth, but meaningful. They make you think. They make you reflect after the moment has passed. Sometimes even their silence says something. And you begin to understand. It's not about constant connection. It's about impact. Some people enter your life loudly. They bring excitement, distraction, noise. But others, they arrive quietly and leave a lasting impression without even trying. And maybe that's what makes this feel so different. There's no need to force anything. No need to prove anything. Just presence. Just awareness. Just a subtle unfolding of something within you that was always there, but never fully acknowledged. And as this continues, you may find yourself letting go of things you once held tightly. Old expectations, old versions of how you thought your life should look. Because now you're not chasing what looks right. You're starting to feel what is right. And that changes everything. Your decisions begin to come from a deeper place. Not from fear, not from pressure, but from understanding. And even if it's unclear where all of this is leading, there's a quiet trust forming within you. A sense that maybe you don't need to have all the answers right now. Maybe it's enough to just stay aware, to stay present, to keep observing what this experience is revealing to you moment by moment. And as you stay in that awareness, something even more subtle begins to happen. You stop looking for constant validation. You stop needing everything to make immediate sense. Instead, you begin to sit with the unknown, not as something to fear, but as something to explore. Because for the first time, you're not rushing to control the outcome. You're paying attention to the process. And that changes the way you experience everything. You notice how certain moments feel heavier than others. How a simple interaction can stay with you for hours, even days. Not because you're overthinking, but because you're finally allowing yourself to feel deeply. And that depth, it's something you may have avoided before. Maybe life taught you to stay guarded, to not read too much into things, to keep everything surface level so you wouldn't get hurt. But now, that approach doesn't feel right anymore, because something within you is asking for honesty. Real honesty, not just about others, but about yourself, how you truly feel, what you truly want, what you've been pretending not to notice. And this person, in their own way, becomes a mirror for that truth, not by telling you who you are, but by creating moments where you can no longer hide from it. And that's where the real shift deepens. You begin to take responsibility for your own awareness. Instead of asking, "What do they mean to me?" you start asking, "What am I learning about myself through this?" And that question, it opens doors you didn't even know existed. You start recognizing patterns from your past, ways you used to react, ways you used to seek approval or avoid vulnerability. And now you see them clearly, not to judge yourself, but to understand yourself. Because awareness without judgment is where real growth lives. And as this clarity builds, you may also feel moments of distance, not necessarily from them, but from the person you used to be. Things that once felt important begin to lose their weight. Conversations that once excited you feel empty. Distractions that once filled your time no longer satisfy you. And it's not because something is wrong. It's because you're changing. Your mind is expanding. Your perspective is evolving. Your standards, your energy, your focus. It's all shifting. And that can feel isolating at times. Because growth is not always something others around you understand. You may feel like you're moving in a direction that's hard to explain. Like you're seeing things differently, feeling things differently, becoming someone different. But this is the part where most people turn back. They go back to what's comfortable, back to what's familiar, back to who they used to be, just to avoid that feeling of uncertainty. But if you stay here, if you allow yourself to move through this phase without escaping it, you begin to build something stronger than comfort. You begin to build alignment. And alignment doesn't always feel easy, but it feels real. It feels like you're no longer forcing your life to fit a version that isn't truly yours. And maybe, just maybe, this person didn't come into your life to give you answers. They came into your life to make you ask better questions. Questions that lead you inward. Questions that guide you toward clarity, not confusion. Questions that slowly but powerfully reshape the way you see yourself and your path. And as those questions stay with you, you start to notice something else. You're becoming more intentional with your time, with your energy, with who you allow into your space. Because now you understand. Not every connection is meant to distract you. Some are meant to wake you up. And once you start to wake up in that way, you begin to move differently. Not in a way that others can always see, but in a way you can feel. You pause more before reacting. You listen more carefully, not just to others, but to yourself. There's a new level of awareness in your decisions. Even the smallest choices, they start to carry meaning, because you're no longer operating on autopilot. You're present, and presence changes everything. You begin to notice the energy behind interactions, the intention behind words, the silence between moments. And sometimes, what isn't said becomes just as important as what is. This is where your perception sharpens. You're not just experiencing life anymore. You're understanding it. And through this understanding, you start to outgrow the need for constant certainty. You no longer need to label every connection immediately. You don't rush to define what something is or where it's going. Because you realize some things are meant to be experienced before they are understood. And that takes patience. It takes trust, not in the outcome, but in your ability to navigate whatever unfolds. And this is where your strength begins to reveal itself. Not the kind of strength that forces control, but the kind that allows space. Space for things to develop naturally. Space for clarity to arrive on its own time. Because now you know. Forcing meaning too early can distort the truth of what something really is. So you slow down. You observe. You let things breathe. And in that space, you begin to see more clearly than ever before. You notice how this person affects your mindset, not just in their presence, but even in their absence. Do they bring clarity or confusion? Do they inspire growth or trigger old patterns? And the most important part, you don't ignore the answer, because now you're honest with yourself, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it challenges what you hoped things would be. And that honesty, it becomes your foundation. You stop building connections on assumptions. You stop holding onto potential that isn't grounded in reality. Instead, you begin to value what is real, what is consistent, what is aligned, what actually supports your growth, not just your emotions. And this is where your perspective matures. You realize that not every meaningful connection is meant to last forever. And that's not a loss. That's part of the purpose. Because sometimes a person enters your life to help you see clearly. And once you see clearly, their role naturally changes, not as something to fear, but as something to understand. Because growth is not about holding on to every connection. It's about becoming the version of yourself who can recognize what each connection was meant to teach. And as you step deeper into that awareness, you begin to trust your own inner voice more than ever before. Not the loud voice of fear, not the impulsive voice of emotion, but the quiet voice, the one that doesn't rush, the one that doesn't panic, the one that simply knows. And the more you listen to that voice, the less you feel lost, even when things are uncertain, even when the path isn't fully clear. Because now you're not searching for direction outside of yourself. You're discovering it within. And that changes how you see everything, including this person. They are no longer just someone who entered your life. They become part of a deeper realization that your life isn't random. Your experiences aren't meaningless. Every moment, every interaction is shaping you into someone more aware, more intentional, more aligned with who you are meant to become. And instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you begin to ask, "What is this helping me become?" And that question, it stays with you, quietly, in the background of your thoughts, in the middle of your day, in the stillness of your night. It changes the way you interpret everything. What once felt confusing starts to feel purposeful. What once felt random begins to feel connected, not in a mystical, unrealistic way, but in a deeply human way. You start to see how every interaction shapes your awareness, how every emotion reveals something about your inner world. And this person, they become part of that reflection, not as the center of your story, but as a moment that helped you see your story more clearly. And when you reach that understanding, something powerful happens. You stop chasing intensity. You stop confusing emotional highs with meaningful connection. Because now you recognize the difference. You understand that real connection doesn't always feel overwhelming. It doesn't always come with constant excitement or unpredictability. Sometimes it feels calm, grounded, clear, steady, and that kind of connection, it doesn't pull you away from yourself. It brings you closer, closer to your truth, closer to your values, closer to the version of you that feels real, not performative. And this awareness, it protects you, not by closing you off, but by keeping you aligned. You begin to recognize when something feels forced, when something requires you to shrink, to overextend, to ignore your instincts. And instead of trying to make it work, you pause, you step back, you listen, because now you trust yourself enough to not settle for confusion disguised as connection. And that trust, it didn't come from nowhere. It came from moments like this, moments where someone entered your life and made you question everything you thought you understood about yourself. Moments that forced you to slow down, to reflect, to grow, and even if their role in your life shifts, even if things don't unfold the way you once imagined, what you gained, that awareness, that clarity, that deeper connection with yourself, that stays. And that's what truly matters. Because at the end of the day, the most important relationship you will ever build is the one you have with yourself. How you understand your thoughts, how you respond to your emotions, how you choose your path when no one else is guiding you. And this experience, it strengthens that relationship. It teaches you that you don't need to lose yourself to feel something meaningful. You don't need to chase validation to feel valued. You don't need constant answers to keep moving forward. You just need awareness and the courage to act on what that awareness shows you. So now, when you think about this person, it's different. You're not just thinking about what they mean to you. You're thinking about what you've discovered about yourself through them, the boundaries you've recognized, the emotions you've understood, the growth you didn't even realize was happening until now. And that realization, it brings a quiet sense of peace, not because everything is perfectly clear, but because you're no longer lost within it. You're present, you're aware, you're grounded in yourself, even as things continue to evolve. And maybe that's the real reason they entered your life. Not to change your path for you, but to help you see that you've had the power to shape it all along. And when you truly begin to see that, something inside you settles. The urgency fades. That need to figure everything out immediately. To define every feeling. To predict where everything is going. It starts to loosen its grip. Because you realize, not everything meaningful comes with instant clarity. Some things reveal their purpose slowly. Through time, through reflection, through the quiet moments where you finally allow yourself to understand what you once rushed past. And this is where your patience deepens. Not forced patience, but natural patience. The kind that comes from knowing that growth cannot be rushed. That understanding unfolds in layers. And each layer brings you closer to yourself. You begin to appreciate the process instead of resisting it. Even the confusing parts. Even the moments that don't make sense yet. Because now you trust that clarity will come. Not all at once, but piece by piece. And in that space, you become more grounded than ever before. You're no longer easily shaken by uncertainty. You're no longer overwhelmed by every emotional wave. Instead, you observe. You feel, but you don't lose yourself in what you feel. That's a different kind of strength. A quiet strength. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything, but knows exactly where it stands. And through this, your perspective on connection continues to evolve. You no longer look at people as something to hold on to or something to depend on for direction. You begin to see them as part of your journey, each one offering something, a lesson, a reflection, a moment of awareness that contributes to your growth. And this person, they become a chapter, not the entire story. A meaningful chapter, but still one part of something much bigger. Your life, your evolution, your becoming. And when you see it that way, you release the pressure to make everything last forever, the pressure to turn every connection into something permanent. Because you understand now, some connections are meant to transform you, not define you. And there's freedom in that. Freedom to experience without attachment. Freedom to care without losing yourself. Freedom to grow without fear of what may or may not stay. And in that freedom, you start to show up more authentically. You're no longer trying to be who you think you need to be. You're simply being who you are. And that authenticity, it changes the energy of everything around you. Your conversations become more real. Your presence becomes more grounded. Your connections become more meaningful because they're no longer based on illusion. And even if things feel uncertain at times, there's a calmness beneath it, a steady awareness that you are exactly where you need to be in your process. Not because everything is perfect, but because you are present enough to learn from it. And as this continues to unfold, you begin to notice something subtle but powerful. You're no longer afraid of change in the same way, because you've experienced what it means to grow through it. You've seen how discomfort can lead to clarity, how uncertainty can lead to understanding, and that changes your relationship with the unknown. It's no longer something that threatens you. It becomes something that shapes you, something that refines you, challenges you, guides you inward again and again. And maybe that's the deeper meaning behind all of this. Not a fixed answer, not a clear destination, but an ongoing process of becoming more aware, more aligned, more connected to yourself with every experience that enters your life. And the more you move through this process, the more you begin to trust something you once ignored. Your intuition, that quiet feeling that doesn't need loud explanations. That subtle knowing that doesn't argue, doesn't force, doesn't rush. It simply guides. Before, you may have doubted it, second-guessed it with logic or fear or the need to be certain. But now, you're starting to recognize its voice. And it's different from everything else. It's calm. It's steady. It doesn't come with panic or pressure. It just knows. And as you listen to it more, you begin to move in a way that feels aligned, not forced. You say yes when it feels right. You step back when something feels off. Not because someone told you to, but because you've become aware enough to feel the difference. And this awareness, it changes how you experience this person as well. You're no longer looking at them through a lens of expectation. You're not trying to make them fit into a specific role in your life. Instead, you're observing what is real, what is consistent, what feels natural without effort. And in doing so, you remove illusion. You remove projection. You stop seeing what you want to see and start seeing what is. And that kind of clarity, it's powerful because it protects your energy. It keeps you from getting lost in assumptions. It keeps you grounded in truth, even when emotions try to pull you in different directions. And the more grounded you become, the more you realize something important. You are not here to chase connections. You are here to align with them. And alignment, It doesn't require force. It doesn't require confusion. It doesn't leave you constantly questioning your worth or your place. It feels natural. It flows. It supports who you are becoming instead of pulling you away from it. And when something doesn't align, you feel it clearly, without needing external validation, without needing someone else to confirm it for you. Because now you trust yourself. And that trust, it changes your standards, not in a way that makes you distant or closed off, but in a way that makes you intentional. You become more aware of what you allow into your life, more aware of what you give your time to, what you give your attention to, what you give your energy to, because you understand now. Your energy is not something to give away carelessly. It shapes your reality. It influences your growth. And every connection you entertain either supports that growth or distracts from it. And this realization, it brings a new kind of discipline into your life. Not strict, not rigid, but conscious. You begin to choose differently. You begin to respond differently. You begin to carry yourself with a sense of awareness that wasn't there before. And people notice it, not because you're trying to stand out, but because you're no longer trying to fit in. You're grounded in who you are, even as you continue to evolve. And through all of this, you start to understand something deeper about timing. Not everything is meant to happen all at once. Not every connection is meant to unfold quickly. Some things take time to reveal their meaning. Some things require distance, reflection, patience. And that's not a delay. That's part of the process. Because what is truly meant to shape you will do so in a way that builds you, not breaks you. In a way that teaches you, not confuses you endlessly. In a way that aligns with your growth, even if it challenges you at first. And this person, whether they stay, whether they drift, whether their role becomes clearer or fades into a lesson, their presence has already done something meaningful. It has shifted your awareness. It has deepened your understanding of yourself. It has brought you closer to the truth of who you are, beneath the noise, beneath the expectations, beneath the old patterns. And that kind of impact, it doesn't disappear. It becomes part of you, part of how you think, part of how you choose, part of how you move forward from here. And as you continue walking this path, you begin to carry less confusion and more clarity, less urgency and more presence, less fear of what might happen, and more trust in how you will handle whatever does. And in that state of trust, something subtle but profound begins to change in the way you experience your own life. You stop reacting to everything instantly. You start responding with awareness instead. There's a pause now between what happens and what you do with it. And in that pause, you find your power. Because that space, that small moment of stillness, is where clarity lies. Before, emotions might have pulled you immediately into action. Immediate conclusions, immediate assumptions. But now, you're learning to sit with things, to observe them fully before assigning meaning. And that alone changes everything. You begin to realize how much of your past confusion came not from situations themselves, but from rushing to interpret them too quickly. Now, you allow experiences to unfold without forcing their meaning. And that shift, it brings a kind of peace you didn't expect. Not because life becomes perfect, but because you stop making it heavier than it needs to be. And through this, your emotional world becomes more stable. Not numb, not disconnected, but steady. You still feel deeply, but you are no longer controlled by every feeling. And that balance, it is rare, it is powerful, it is something you had within you all along, but only now are you learning how to access it. And as this inner balance grows, your perception of this person continues to evolve too. You no longer place them at the center of your emotional world. They are no longer the source of your clarity or confusion. They are simply part of your experience. And that shift in perspective, it frees you. Because when someone is no longer holding your emotional stability in their hands, you begin to reclaim it for yourself. And that reclamation is quiet, but life-changing. You start noticing how much energy you used to give away without realizing it. How much thought, how much emotional weight, how much expectation. And now you begin to pull it back. Not in resentment, but in awareness. You understand now that your peace was never meant to depend on someone else's behavior. It was always meant to be cultivated within you. And that understanding, it matures you, it softens you, it strengthens you in ways that are not loud, but deeply rooted. And slowly, your attachment to outcomes begins to loosen. You stop needing things to turn out a specific way for you to feel okay. You start trusting your ability to adapt, to understand, to grow through whatever unfolds. And that trust, it becomes your foundation. Not blind trust, not wishful thinking, but a grounded inner confidence that says, I can handle whatever comes because I am not the same person I used to be. And that realization, it changes how you see everything ahead of you. Even uncertainty no longer feels like a threat. It feels like space. Space for possibility. Space for learning. Space for becoming. And in that space, you begin to see that nothing in your life has been random in the way you once thought. Every experience, every emotion, every connection has been shaping your awareness step by step, not rushing you, not forcing you, but guiding you into deeper understanding. And this person, they become part of that unfolding understanding, not as something to cling to, but as something that helped you wake up to yourself more clearly. And that awareness, it brings a quiet gratitude, not loud, not dramatic, just a calm recognition that even the moments that confused you were part of something meaningful in your growth. And as that realization settles within you, you begin to feel something new emerging, a sense of inner alignment, not because everything outside of you has changed, but because something inside of you finally has.